Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro, and it's time for updated Oscar predictions. It is August. We didn't do predictions in July, but now that July's over, we have things to talk about. Film festival lineups just happened with Toronto and Venice. So until the festivals happen, this is kind of it.
We had a lot of excitement with Barbenheimer. This is really the Barbenheimer edition.
But let's go into the Best Picture predictions and talk about this new number one. Oppenheimer number one. Listen, I see a lot of people who think, oh, Oppenheimer, maybe it'll win director and then Killers will take picture. And I'm like, Oppenheimer has taken Killers out of the race for the win, in my opinion. I mean, maybe that's too soon to say, but
people are gonna be concerned about her head. She just got a little skin thing that she's being treated for. She's just fine.
Because how is Killers gonna win Best Picture if we're in agreement that Nolan's winning director? I mean, I guess we should start by this.
Yeah.
Are we in agreement that Nolan is winning director? We absolutely the fuck should be. We absolutely should be in agreement. I literally think that his name's engraved on the award. That's how much I think he's winning director.
I would put money on this one. Even if it's not your favorite movie of the year, I feel like it is the filmmaking achievement of the year. I just can't get over how technically marvelous this film was, despite being a biopic, who's usually they're not given this sort of treatment.
The IMAX 70 millimeter of it all.
Yeah.
Nolan just wants to present this in a grand, big screen way. I didn't even know if Nolan was ever going to have an Oscar moment because a lot of his films
I would have said no.
Sci-fi, or their appeal is mostly fanboy. But here, everybody's on board with this. This is going to be top 3, if not number 1 on Metacritic's compiled critics top 10s. They are on board with this.
It also gets people hopeful that we can have a resurgence of high quality dramas that are not based on IP.
Yeah, there's a good narrative to how it's reinvigorating, smart adult movie making right now. The fact that it's making nearly Bohemian Rhapsody level box office splash for the kind of movie it is insane. Obviously part of that had to do with the Barbenheimer hype.
Another way this is different from other Nolan films. I mean, this is a SAG Ensemble 3 acting category, potentially contender. Best Picture winners have often gotten acting trophies and acting nominations. It's rare that a Best Picture winner is left out of those categories. And Oppenheimer is a huge acting play, mainly for Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy, but each of them has a great narrative. And people feel that this is a very important film that speaks to our times. Tell me what box it doesn't tick.
My hands are tied when I think about how many awards Oppenheimer could win. The fact that I think it could win directing, acting, multiple techs. I mean, at that point, you gotta say it's in contention to win. And I can't think of another movie that I think has the potential 7 or 8 win sweep that Oppenheimer could have.
Yeah.
And I mean it. I think if Oppenheimer wins, we might be in for a second year in a row where we have a sweep, despite a decade-long drought of sweeps. And I even think that we might even be in for a scenario where Oppenheimer is a clean runaway frontrunner, because if Oppenheimer wins Best Picture, it would take PGA and BAFTA and possibly Critics' Choice. It might be very obvious and not even fun in regards to how much of a competition it is.
Show me the competitor. Show me the competitor that is going to dominate and is going to surpass Oppenheimer. I'm completely open to the possibility that a film comes out that's a little bit more heartwarming and cheery, that is not even in contention to win directing, that could pull some sort of coda or something along those lines, because we've seen that happen plenty of times. But show me where that movie is. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't think that movie is coming. And Oppenheimer is not like a Power of the Dog or a Roma, where it's just sort of boring for a lot of people, and there is some large portion of the audience that just can't get into it. Power of the Dog, there was a little bit of a red flag with the IMDb score, and also the fact that its win count seemed to be dwindling as the year went on. I have a much harder time seeing where these red flags are with Oppenheimer, and I would just like someone to show me where is the film that surpasses it. I don't really believe that it's Killers of the Flower Moon, because I don't know what Killers of the Flower Moon can win if it's not winning director. It doesn't seem like it's a strong screenplay movie. And
Lily Gladstone could still win.
Lily Gladstone, absolutely.
I just think both movies are white male prestigious filmmakers examining atrocities of history. Oppenheimer just feels bigger than Killers, and
the town ain't big enough, and Oppenheimer has swallowed it, I think. I don't think Killers could possibly be as exciting.
And Oppenheimer has a lot of Academy Award-less talent, whereas Killers, most of its talent has Academy Awards. Some people will say hey, isn't that tug at your heartstrings little indie that's been winning lately, isn't that Past Lives? I don't think it is. I think Past Lives' little $10 million gross doesn't really compare to some of the giants that are going to show up this year at the Oscars.
Yeah.
I think that movie just doesn't have the win potential outside of screenplay.
Yeah.
I also think it's a little too somber and subtle. I even think if there was a coda, it wouldn't beat Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer is a giant.
I mean, it wouldn't have been Coda versus Power of the Dog. It would have been Coda versus Oppenheimer, because Oppenheimer would have swallowed Power of the Dog. Can we agree on that?
I mean, critics might be giving this thing their awards as well.
It may have the appearance of like that stuffy older Oscar bait that we're kind of done with, but I don't really think it is. Kind of like Killers of the Flower Moon, what separates it is that it takes a critical examination of history and it reveals complications therein. Whereas I think a lot of the previous Oscar bait would have been like, here's a story where this person is the hero. And these stories resonate with us where we don't really have a leader to follow and where we get a complicated portrait of somebody. I don't think you can take Oppenheimer down in that sense.
I just don't think Oppenheimer feels like The Fabelmans or something. It is traditional Oscar bait that it's like a big biopic, but at the same time, it feels like we haven't seen a biopic done this way, or even on this scale. So it does feel
and this
new.
story has not been told on a screen.
Some people think that maybe The Holdovers could be like the heartwarming movie. Maybe that wins TIFF and everything. But again, like, even if Holdovers was contending for a screenplay and an actor win or something like that as a package, I don't know. I just feel like Oppenheimer's also contending for like an acting, directing, text. I don't know if that like outdoes it.
The Holdovers feels a little bit dated. Like, we were just talking about whether movies are going to feel dated. It's not only is it trying to imitate movies from a different era, but it doesn't look like it's going to set itself apart so significantly that it's going to be a movie we consider important.
Oppenheimer may have a slight obstacle in that some people think, well, it's not emotional enough. But at the same time, you know, it's not isolating in that artsy way that like Power of the Dog and Roma may have suffered from.
It's probably one of Nolan's like more tough, fibrous, dense movies to digest, but I think still it's palatable in how entertaining and fast-paced it is.
I mean, audiences like it a lot.
It makes you feel like you're in the ride, and I don't think you get too isolated from it.
And The Color Purple, if you want to say that's the alternative, I think that it just doesn't have enough potential for winning screenplay or director. You know, in general, I'm actually kind of thinking about what if The Color Purple is just meh. It's all right. It's decent. Maybe it's not bad, but it's just not that exciting.
But it's the kind of thing where I wonder if it could still get in.
And
I think it can still get in.
I think if it got like a 3.3, 3.4 on Letterboxd, I don't think it's enough.
I personally am not going to take it out for fucking air.
How about the argument that, you know, with Warner Brothers, we already know that Barbie is big, and if Dune's coming out, that's 2 for Warner Brothers. And it's been very difficult for a studio to squeeze 3 in. I mean, I know
isn't it also just unlikely that a studio is going to produce that many Oscar contending films?
Speaking of Barbie is going to blow past $1 billion.
Yeah.
It could be the highest grossing movie of the year.
Yeah.
It might beat the Mario movie. Barbie has great critic reviews. It's not like as high as Oppenheimer, but not everything is. And as it turns out, Barbie lived up pretty goddamn well to the hype. You know, not everybody thinks it's perfect. I don't think that was ever going to happen, but it's better than I thought it was going to be, especially being the mega phenomenon that it is. The cultural conversation starter that it has been, and the inevitable, you know, Gosling player and tech player that it is. Moving people to tears. Like a really well-made movie. I don't see how this movie doesn't have the ingredients of a Best Picture film. And if you want to say, well, because it's a Barbie movie, I feel like Greta Gerwig's stamp on it has transcended that. Everybody knows it's really like a Greta Gerwig movie. If this movie wasn't nominated for Best Picture, I'd be like, why? Why not?
More than just me like wanting the movie to get in, because I think some people are going to perceive this as like we're just being fans of the movie. But I just think this makes a lot of sense. I would have a really hard time seeing a world where this doesn't get in. If you are part of a moment where people are really excited about going to see you in a theater, like the legs are good. It smashed its opening weekend. People like turning out in droves in pink. And it wasn't just for a superhero film. Like people acknowledge that there's some prestigious crafts going on here. And the talent has already been Oscar nominated and some of the most exciting, you know, working right now with really unique voices that shine through despite this IP. I don't think you can convince me that the Oscars are just going to be completely blind to this film. Like, it's just not going to show up. It could even have like worse critic reviews. It could be more divisive and I would still probably think it's getting in. Wouldn't it just seem kind of out of touch? Wouldn't it just seem like, how did you overlook that? It feels like this year is the year of the Barbie movie. There are a lot of people saying that the Barbie movie is not that good or it's not as good as people say it is. But I would just say this, you know, if you found like 10 people who went to go see the movie and you asked them, you know, did you love it? How many of you loved it? You'd easily find at least 2 who loved it. Not just liked it, loved it.
Probably like half of them.
Probably half of them, because audiences actually seem to be taking really well to the movie. It's a very populist movie. I think that's being lost on some people, thinking that this is some like out of touch elitist film.
Some people are like, well, since Gosling could win, and since it could win a tech or two, and since it could win screenplay, do you think it can win Best Picture? And I'm like, I would slow down there. I don't think it's going to win all those awards necessarily. I just don't think it's actually going to win Best Picture. I just don't.
No. So. It's not going to win Best Picture.
I wouldn't mind if it did, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't even know if it'd be nominated if there were 5 slots. I honestly don't.
Yeah. There's too wide of a sense that the movie is just not perfect, or like that a couple things about it are clunky, or that it's heavy-handed, and like, that's all fair. But those are not things that have stopped other films who have been accused of the same thing from getting nominated for Best Picture.
Don't Look Up was far more divisive.
Jojo Rabbit, too. I keep saying that. I also say Promising Young Woman is a film that some people thought was very uneven, but others just loved it. And that's where we are with Barbie. And on top of that, it made a fucking $1 billion.
Dune Part 2, unfortunately, it looks like Warner Brothers was considering if they want to move this or even The Color Purple to next year. Dune, they said they would move to like April or May or something. A little scary. I'd be very upset if Dune got moved. There's nothing I can do about it, like in my predictions, like right now. I'm not gonna take it out of my predictions because they said that. Like, I just don't know. We don't know how many movies are really gonna push or not.
I don't want to try to forecast that hard as to whether a movie's gonna get pushed or not. I feel like we're at a 50-50 here with whether Dune gets pushed or not.
Spider-Verse, how are we feeling about that?
I feel really good about Spider-Verse still. People are having a moment where all they're thinking about is Barbenheimer, but not too long ago, we were thinking about Spider-Verse Past Lives, Spider-Verse Past Lives. Those 2 films are the most liked of the first half of the year, and I think it's by far, I think people love both of those movies. Spider-Verse has so much going for it that I can't unconvince myself that this actually does get a Best Picture nomination, including the fact that people believe this is an achievement in filmmaking craft, in animation craft, and you can't speak about the movie without saying how visually stunning it is. On top of that, you know, the story was good, it had a parenting message. I think the film is a really good example of how to do diversity in a film, so I think there's a lot of different touch points at which Spider-Verse could really become a film you love and become one of your favorite movies, and I don't have much of a doubt that this is going to be one of the critics' favorite movies of the year. When I look back at like the Metacritic top polls, I see, you know, Dune placed at number 4 for the year that it was in. I don't see how Spider-Verse couldn't also place in like the top 5 for critics' favorite movies.
It probably will.
I also have to remind myself that Spider-Verse is going to fucking kill it at the Critics' Choice Awards. You bet your ass they are going to put in every single category that they can think of.
I still think that there's a fair argument that maybe it doesn't have as much going for it outside of Best Picture. Like, screenplay is like, yeah, like, it'll get screenplay if it's in Best Picture, but it doesn't feel locked in for that. It doesn't necessarily feel locked in for sound or visual effects or many nominations. You know, it could get up to 5 or 6
I think it's locked in for score, though. And that's really good.
Yeah, I think score's
I think
good.
screenplay is not going to be that hard for it to get.
As far as fall fests go, Toronto looks like, I don't know what is happening that's very awardsy outside of the holdovers. And I was thinking going into fall fests, like, is there a lack of awards contenders? Like, or am I crazy? Because last year we saw Tar, All Quiet, Banshees, The Whale. Going into it, Empire of Light seemed really big. The Fablemans was there.
Yeah, and we could even lump in Venice. The Holdovers still seems like it's the biggest awards contender out of all of these films.
Saltburn didn't even announce TIFF or Venice, and Saltburn might just do Telluride, and then we'll see if it does New York or something. Saltburn is still one of those movies that I'm looking at to be like a fall fest breakout, but I'm kind of surprised it's not the type of thing that's at every single festival. Could this be the weakest year in terms of the fall festivals that we've had in a long time?
For awards-wise, it could be a good year.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Venice has a lot of movies that I'm looking forward to. Maestro, The Killer, Poor Things. Ava DuVernay has a new movie that we didn't know existed. We didn't know it was coming out this year, at least. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and it's like there's a lot of maybes.
There's even a Ferrari. So there's definitely potential for there to be something on top of the Holdovers that comes out strong out of these festivals. I'm really interested in whether The Killer is going to be great, and whether, if it is great, if the genre is going to hold it back from being a part of the Best Picture conversation, or if it could be one of Fincher's best, and then we could have like a race going on.
Or Poor Things. I mean, what if that's, Nightmare Alley at minimum?
Because Poor Things has a lot of tech potential and even acting potential.
And now Poor Things got pushed to December, which feels a little bit like a more awardsy release date, and that has the potential to maybe go to New York or something now.
The thing with Poor Things is it might be one of those films where people are trying to say, guys, it's really good, but I don't know if if this is the awards thing you think it might be.
That's what I think's probably going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, Maestro, like, that seems like a huge awards hopeful. They're going to Venice. They're not going to TIFF, which is like, is that some kind of red flag or...
Well, I think they know that people have been underwhelmed at their test screenings. They might be looking at the critics and saying, maybe you guys are more likely to like this movie.
Weirdly, on our top 10, we don't have any movies that are premiering at Venice, which is bizarre.
Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, it's the first time in a long time.
There's room for Ava DuVernay's film to be a surprise thing.
And American Fiction seems sort of interesting. It seems like it could be a best actor, best screenplay contender.
One Life with Anthony Hopkins.
There's Lee, which with Kate Winslet.
Yeah,
there's
Lee could be a thing.
Priscilla is, probably just going to be treated like most Sofia Coppola films, aka ignored by the Academy.
But well liked.
So between the Cannes films, Anatomy of a Fall, Zone of Interest, the two that we're really considering could be Best Picture movies, I guess aside from May, December, which is also somewhat of in the conversation, I have flip-flopped Zone of Interest with Anatomy of a Fall. Now, I think the Zone of Interest is one of the best, if not the best movies of the year, but thinking about it more, I'm like, it is a tough sell as an awards player. It really is a tough sell. I'm just curious to see how it plays at TIFF, because this movie could invigorate people like it did at Cannes, but they might be more the audience to say, I appreciated it or respect it, but I didn't really enjoy it. And if you're getting a lot of that, I think that's not a good sign. Whereas Anatomy of a Fall, I'm imagining that it's going to be pretty well liked when it comes to TIFF. I think the themes are pretty palatable. I think Sandra Hüller and the screenplay have a lot of buzz, and if I think those are getting nominated, then easily, you could kind of slot that movie in for Best Picture. Zone of Interest, I just think, I think it can definitely get director, but aside from that, a lot of categories are a tough sell.
And there's not an acting category in sight for that movie.
No. Gold Derby thinks this movie's like number 7, and then it's getting screenplay and stuff.
It's got a 98 on Metacritic, so I understand where people are coming from.
Yeah, but that thing's gonna...
That's the most acclaimed movie of the year. Okay, that goes in my Best Picture predictions.
Yeah, but it might drop to like a 93 or a 94, and then I don't know. It's just a number at the end of the day. It's going to be high. Critics are going to like it, but it is goddamn artsy. It is goddamn experimental. So, I said before, the messaging, what it's going for is apparent. It comes through in a way that I think will make it more viable to the Academy than the typical, more experimental movie. Like, it's not EO. But I don't know. I just think a lot of people might be like, oh, I'm isolated by this movie. I feel isolated.
It's also worth considering, what's your prediction for International Feature? Because the International Feature winner of the past many years has been nominated for Best Picture. It still begs the question whether Zone of Interest or Anatomy of a Fall wins that one. But when you pit them against each other, Anatomy of a Fall is more palatable, and you can guarantee that's going to capture a wider audience of people who really like it.
It feels like Zone of Interest would have more people who think it's like the best movie of the year, but Anatomy of a Fall might be more accessible. I think winning the Palm gave that movie a lot of buzz. Like, that is now on everybody's radar, which is great for it. Sandra Hüller being firmly in Best Actress, being in contention to win, that's a big deal. So that's why I have Anatomy of a Fall in and not the Zone of Interest now. And I still think that people think the Zone of Interest is going to be something that it isn't, because they have it very high in their Best Picture predictions, and that doesn't really make sense with the kind of movie it is. I think many of you will understand when you see it.
Also worth mentioning, The Boy and the Heron is opening TIFF. So this is an awards contender. Like, this has been in our predictions for a long time. And not only do we know this movie's premiering, we actually have a little bit more information because people have seen it, because it is out in Japan right now. We look at Letterboxd, it's holding a 3.8, and the 6 and 7s are there. Okay, if this movie was contending for Best Picture, everybody would need to be like, wow, this movie's amazing, it's one of Hayao Miyazaki's best. I'm seeing some people saying it's one of Hayao Miyazaki's best, but I don't think it's going to be considered widely his best. I think it's going to be more like the Wind Rises.
I think it's like The Wind Rises too.
I guess from the reaction so far, I don't see it becoming a Best Picture thing, especially with Spider-Verse. I don't know how you can beat Spider-Verse.
So for the 10th slot, I'm kind of between The Color Purple and Air.
You got to do The Color Purple.
I don't have to.
You have to.
If The Color Purple's out in picture, then it drops from the following categories. It's no longer in cinematography. That's kind of easy. It doesn't need
I
that.
wouldn't put it in
It's no
cinematography
longer-
anyway.
It's no longer in production design. And it just gets costumes. It gets a couple acting. It's not one of those things where it's like, well, I can't imagine it dropping from all these categories. I'm kind of like, yeah, I could see how it could drop from all these categories.
What do you mean? You said like 2 categories. There's still a bunch of categories where it's still contending.
What if it's just one of those movies where it's like just not enough people think it's like amazing, you know? And most people are like, yeah, it's good, or it's like, okay.
Here's what I think kills The Color Purple, okay? I think it's less about whether it's a good movie than the box office performance. I think if this thing doesn't do well at the box office, it's gone.
I don't think it will do that well. I mean,
now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know if this does that well either, because I don't think that the reviews are going to be so stellar. So audiences would have to carry it. It would be one of these like populist picks.
Here's my theory. The Color Purple is going to have a 6, 7, 8 stack on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
And it's not going to have a lot of 9s and 10s. The other thing I was thinking when, those articles came out about like studios considering pushing their movies, I thought, oh my God, Air's coming back. Putting Air at number 10 wouldn't be that bad, because what if 2 movies do get pushed?
But here's the thing with Air. I don't believe in it getting acting nominations.
I believe in it getting a screenplay nomination. Viola Davis could happen. Why couldn't Viola Davis?
She could happen, but I don't really think it's going to.
If Air gets SAG Ensemble, then maybe it just gets screenplay picture, just like Women Talking.
Yeah, Air could get SAG Ensemble. I still definitely agree with that.
So there you go. I mean, it could get screenplay picture. You don't even have to predict an actor.
I don't know. You think it could get editing too?
On its best day, but I still feel like it would barely squeeze
Air
in.
just feels so slight to me.
On Twitter, when I throw shade towards it, people are like, oh, well, don't hurt Air. Like, we like Air. Everyone likes Air. Like, here.
Yeah, everyone likes Air, but they like it as a 7 or an 8 out of 10. Everybody gives Air a 7 or an 8. You can even look on IMDb. It's 7 and 8s all abound. Do people really think it's Best Picture worthy?
How about this? Objectively speaking, the thing to do is to predict a film from Venice that is by Searchlight or Netflix. 2 studios that we do not have in our top 10s that are very reliable getting movies into Best Picture, and pick a movie from a festival that we also don't have getting into Best Picture. Maestro the Killer or Poor Things or something like that.
Yeah, you could throw Poor Things back up there. I wouldn't hate it.
At the same time, though, I don't think that's how I'm going to choose this 10th slot. I do want to look at the movies individually.
You having Saltburn in makes me go a little against Air as well.
Because of Amazon. Also, here's something interesting. Origin, Ava DuVernay's movie, doesn't have a distributor. So if, say, Netflix picks that up and it's like a surprise hit, then maybe they found their movie. Although they already have their release date scheduled, so they kind of already have their slate of what they think that they could get in. I don't know. I mean, I think there's still like some holes in our top 10 logic in terms of not a lot of festival movies and missing something from Netflix.
And it's funny because we certainly don't have a lack of movies pre-festivals.
An abundance, especially if we threw Air in there. That would be 5 that have already come out.
Which is sort of unheard of.
I do want to leave the Zone of Interest out for now. Although that could squeeze in at the last second, maybe.
Yeah, you could put it in. It's also sort of a festival movie.
Is it really just going to get director, international?
It feels like
picture?
It could hold a space of its own in the awards race. And what about if it gets New York and LA Film Critics Best Director prize?
I'd be surprised if May December got into Best Picture. Having seen it, I'd be like, huh, it would be kind of weird. Next Goal Wins, I think that's going to be solid. I don't think anyone's going to be like nutting over it. The Bob Marley movie looks really mid. Rustin looks like it will probably be decent, but I don't know if it's going to have Best Picture passion. I would say the same about like Naiad. Napoleon seems a little old school.
I think you might want to pull up Zone of Interest.
I guess you could do that, but I also don't see what's wrong with Air, or even keeping Color Purple at number 10.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would still have Color Purple in. But it is really Oscar bait. What if it makes people cry? And how are you going to say it doesn't get actress and supporting actress,
And those are our Best Picture predictions. We will be posting the rest of our predictions soon. Director, screenplay, acting categories, texts. They'll be in, separate chunks.
You can stay tuned for the other videos because overall, I don't know about you, I have a predicted whopping 17 nominations for Barbenheimer. And I might even predict that Barbenheimer, considering it as a single film for no reason, will win over half of those Oscars.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
How many nominations do you think Barbenheimer is getting?